I want to talk a little bit about how to find new fishing spots. Some of it some of you just have to grind it out and really just go fishing, number one, and really try out new areas. I mean, challenge yourself a little bit to go find an area that you haven't fished before, but what are some of the things that you might be looking for? Well, some of those could be structure, which, a dock, for example, could be a good one that's easily seen, but what about some of the things that you don't see? And those could be contours on the bottom, could be where the tide rips around a corner of a creek, many different things like that to help you find fish. One of my biggest suggestions would be taking the boat, look at these tides, take a negative tide. A negative tide will expose everything, structure, oyster bars, mounds, sandbars, things like that. So, take a little trip one day on a negative tide. The fishing is typically not the best on those tides to begin with. So pack a little cooler, go idle around creeks, look at things and just take mental notes as you're doing so. I mean, that will help play a big role in finding fish. And when you take those mental notes, really, then you can go back and fish it on a better tide. And I think those you will soon discover can be productive on your future fishing trips. One of the things that I would like to add to that really is just, if you've done your research and looked at places you want to fish and you're going back and fishing those places that you think would be productive, take notes of the good and the bad. Everybody wants to take notes of all the good stuff. Just take notes on the bad stuff too, because that will prevent you from having another bad trip. Every spot can vary different based upon the tide. So, if you go to a creek and you're looking at that creek at a negative tide and you've got an oyster mound and a little sandbar behind it, everything looks good. A week later, you go fish that on a better tide and you have a low incoming tide and don't do any good. Well, maybe go try that like on a high outgoing tide. That may be productive because every fishing spot has everything to do with what the tide is doing and where it is in the stage of the tide. So just really pay attention to that and just don't be afraid to go out there and try something different. Gut instinct plays a big role in this as well. I mean, as far as finding new fishing areas, you pull it to an area and there's no bait, the water's really muddy. Use your gut instinct. I mean, I've done that several times, places that I've never fished for or fished, and pulled up to a completely different spot and said, hey, the water's clean, there's a lot of bait in here. So don't hesitate to use your gut instinct. I think that always plays a vital role in everything that you do, including fishing on the water.